Arata is the definition of a worthless loser because despite being the jacked heir to a wealthy family, he scares off more hoes than Zenitsu. However, this all changes after he learns that he was adopted and decides to clap every single one of his stepsisters. It all starts with Arata asking Shin for Riz tips so he can finally get some action. After Shin says he just has to go with the flow to get a girlfriend like his, Arata loses it and says he doesn't know what the flow means. Shin then asks why he is even bothered by girls when he can technically have anyone he wants as their family's heir. As Arata tries to mask low testosterone level with a stupid speech about true romance, their sisters all come out and take turns guessing that Arata was definitely looking for advice to deal with the fact that it's the same size as their pinky. When he tells them to mind their own business, Aoka continues with the insults. So Shin decides to add a little spice by saying that Arata was talking about the size of their milk bags. After sending her dog to bite chunks of skin off his body, she tells him to get help because regular brothers don't obsess over their sister's plot. Arata then claims that he has only ever seen them as ugly meat sacks. But then Aoka asks if that was the case during his incident with Kotono, when Banri finally steps in as the oldest to defend him. Minami also admits that he isn't all bad, so he tries to give her a hug, but receives a punch that almost paralyzes him. Just then, Aoka reminds them that it's Kotono's birthday on Saturday, and they all agree to go out together after the birthday dinner before heading to the train station for school. Later on, Shin meets up with Arata in the men's room to talk about how everyone in school acts like they have the dream family, when in reality they just get bullied by all 5 sisters and have almost no way of fighting back. Shin also points out the fact that most people suspect that they actually clap in secret, and when Arata says nothing like that will ever happen, Shin reminds him of Kotono's confession. Hours later, Arata considers sending a friend request to his crush, but chickens out right before Aoka comes in to ask for his notes. As she reads through them, he notices that jugs have changed a bit and says she should start acting her age, but then she calls him stupid for thinking she needs to be civilized up in the same house that they all grew up in. The next moment, she asks about his crush and says Shin told her all about it, so he reluctantly tells her the girl's name. After saying that they are actually on the same committee, she tries to set them up, but he tells her to focus on finding someone that can put up with her irritating personality instead. On Kotono's birthday several days later, he puts on a suit and waits until dinner time before heading out and seeing Aoka, who then manages to squeeze out a compliment before heading down. At the dinner table moments later, Minami tries to apologize for losing her AirPod, but she gets pissed and continues cussing until they both start arguing. After Arata tells them to stop, their dad, Kaname, finally shows up and thanks them all for waiting. Just as they make a toast to Kotono, Kaname decides to drop a bomb and says they are all actually adopted. Arata immediately asks for an explanation, so he further explains that while Minami and Shin are actually twins, the rest of them are all unrelated, after also saying that he promised their mother to keep it a secret until the right time. He continues the dinner like nothing happened, but they all drift away from reality. Shortly after that, a maid tries to serve them tea, but Banri tells her not to worry and proceeds to serve it herself before Aoka starts talking about how she feels betrayed. After Seiha and Minami tell her to stop overthinking it, they ask Banri if she knew about it since she has been around longer. She then claims to have forgotten most of their childhood years and says the fact that they are all basically orphans who hit the jackpot should not change anything about their relationship. With that said, they all head inside to rest, but after a couple minutes of overthinking, Arata decides to cool off with a bath upon seeing all the plot covers in the laundry basket. He starts to accept that nothing has really changed until he locks eyes with Kotono in the bath. He immediately apologizes and turns to leave, but she asks for help with her back, so he ends up scrubbing while Shin meets up with Aoka to talk, as she starts to wonder how the sudden revelation will affect the fact that she has always treated Arata like her twin brother. Shin claims that the only thing they really have to worry about is how society will react when it becomes public news. Meanwhile, Kotono has just stopped Arata from going out, leaving him frozen in shock as he fears that she wants him as her birthday present.
Yeah, boy.
While he tries to get his sword under control, Shin tells Aoka that they can actually start a family harem because the law doesn't stop unrelated siblings from getting married.
No, he's got a point.
Naturally, she gets disgusted by the idea and asks if he has just been waiting for the perfect opportunity to unleash his creepy nature. After he immediately puts his guard back up and claims to only have positive thoughts of her as a sister, Aoka foolishly believes him and starts talking about the night Arata told her to cover up her melons. While chills run down her spine, when Shin tells her to cut him some slack, she asks if he knows what actually happened between him and Kotono, but he refuses to say anything because Arata made him swear to keep the truth to himself. Aoka then says that they all know he would never actually do anything to her, and further explains that they have just been using it to tease him. After giving it some thought, he tells her that Kotono suddenly decided to confess her feelings to him that night and refused to take no for an answer when he turned her down. As he tried to pull her away, they all entered the game room and thought he was the one making a move on her, so he decided to tell only Shin so the girls wouldn't trouble Kotono. Upon hearing this, Aoka tells him that they need to do something about Kotono, but Shin reminds her that she is still young and might just be confusing respect for love. When Aoka tells him to stop acting like he is some kind of wise mage, he agrees that Kotono's feelings might reach new heights, especially with the truth of their family finally being revealed. Back in the bath, Arata has just asked Kotono if some of the steam entered her head, but she responds by confessing her love again and refusing to let go of him. When he tells her to stop thinking anything can ever happen between them, she replies that she has already read about the implications of loving a brother, but still refuses to give up, so he pulls her away and explains that she is just confused. He then promises to continue looking out for her until the day her brain grows past phase 1 and fixes whatever went wrong with her ability to understand her own emotions. He also decides to keep what just happened to himself and turns to leave, so she walks back into the bath and says she has never met anyone capable of being so heartless and caring at the same time. Meanwhile, Konim tries to convince himself that wrecking the entire family was worth it by focusing on the promise he made to his wife. But Banri interrupts his meditation to talk about it. By then, Arata has just gotten back to his room and finds Seiya on his bed, so she asks if she got lost. When she asks where he is coming from, he quickly lies about needing to take a walk.
Cap.
But she refuses to believe him and walks around for a bit before talking about how they all played rock, paper, scissors to pick rooms and gave him the smallest one while Aoka got the largest. As she continues talking about random stuff they have all experienced as a family, he tries to figure out how that is connected to her sudden decision to play detective in his room. The next moment, she pushes him back onto the bed and leans in to monitor his heart rate while he starts to wonder why God is constantly testing him.
What more do you want from me?
After finally pulling away from his chest, she says he isn't the creep she once thought he was, so he asks why she is trying to turn him into one. As soon as she says she was in the bath when Kotono ambushed him, he throws her off before she commends him on acting civilized despite the temptation he had to deal with. She further says that although Kotono might just be confusing normal sibling love for something else, their dad's sudden confession might have pushed her over the edge of sanity. Arata still tries to figure out why all that caused her to spontaneously straddle his glizzy, so she explains that it was the only way to make sure he doesn't actually see them as potential lovers, even if they aren't real siblings.
What?
When he asks why she couldn't use a less creepy approach, she claims that method was the easiest because she doesn't have any feelings for him. She goes on to remind him that not being siblings means they might start ending up in freaky situations, but also tells him not to worry about her because she still sees him as an extremely ugly caveman. After reminding him that she is still his older sister and demanding for a little more respect, she leaves but takes a moment outside to make sure her little experiment didn't actually cause her to get any weird feelings, just as she manages to make herself believe that being so close to him meant nothing. Minami shows up and asks why she is outside his room, but says it's nothing and immediately walks away. The next day, Arata wakes up with the stress of their new reality still weighing on his shoulders before getting ready for school. The moment he leaves the room, he sees Banri in a lab uniform with Kotono and asks if she has finally lost it. So she explains that she is just trying it on before asking if he likes how it brings out the shape of her plot. When he calls her stupid for asking such a question so early in the morning, she tells Kotono not to feel bad about the fact that he hates them. So he tries to apologize, but gets even more confused when she tries to strip Kotono right in front of him. On the way out, Shin then tells him that she was probably trying to lighten the mood so they can go back to the way things were. Moments later, two random guys see the girls walking to school together and starts gossiping about their perfect drumsticks, as they go on to say that they have the most perfect family. Arata and Shin try to figure out how they will respond when the truth comes out. Just then, they realize that the girls are actually professional liars because they are all acting like it's another average day. While Shin and the girls go on about their day in school like absolutely nothing happened, Arata spends the entire day brooding until the last period. Upon getting to his locker to pack up, he continues reminding himself that the girls are still his sisters to make sure he doesn't start thinking of them in a freaky way.
What do you mean by that?
Just then, Minami shows up, so he asks if she skipped practice, but she claims to have the day off for once. As they walk together, he commends her on managing to stay consistent with her training despite all the pressure she is under as the school's hottest tennis protege. Just as she also tries to give him a compliment, three girls run up to get pictures with her and start glazing harder than unemployed Taylor Swift fans. When they finally leave, he asks why girls are also thirsting over her, so she tells him about a photo she took with a guy's uniform, which apparently made all the girls think she also likes to clap kitties. After wondering why he has never experienced such luck, he suggests going out and enjoying her day off. But then she explains that it was her coach who gave her the day off because she failed a placement test. This causes him to remember that she has always been the dumbest in the family, so he offers to help her study before taking her to a restaurant. While explaining the basics, he takes a close look at her face and sees why almost everyone wants a piece of her cake. She then asks for a detailed explanation of the difficult part, but as he breaks it down in ways her overactive mind can understand, she gets distracted. When he finishes, she acts like every word he said got carved into her brain, so he gives her a quick test and she proceeds to fail every single problem. As he starts to accept that she is a lost cause, she grabs the microphone to sing, and he ends up getting won over by her free spirit. Several minutes later, they head out. But while trying to say that she needs another study session, he sees his crush hanging out with someone else and hides. On the way home moments later, she admits that singing with him was actually fun, but he quickly reminds her that they were meant to be working on her rapidly diminishing IQ points. When she says their dinner with Kanem was insane, he asks for her thoughts on the current situation, and she suggests talking with him again to figure out who their real parents actually are, as she expresses a deep concern for Kotono. Seeing as she is the youngest and most sensitive, Arata starts to think that she isn't completely useless, but reminds her to keep the whole thing secret so they don't attract unnecessary attention. She goes on to say that not being actual siblings doesn't change anything about the relationship they have all built as a family, and this causes his belief in her to increase until she suddenly tells him not to worry about the fact that his crush is already giving another dude the slurp special.
Huh?
He immediately asks how she knows about it, so she tells him how Alka blabbed about his pathetic love life and suggests focusing on being a good older brother instead of trying to lose his V card. After patting his head and telling him to cheer up, she asks if they can play a game at home, but he refuses and says she should focus on fixing whatever is wrong with her head. At the house shortly after that, she gives Alka a box of cakes and hands over her AirPods before saying that she found it in her clubroom. After she apologizes for losing it, Alka gives it back to her as a hand-me-down and makes her promise not to be so careless before asking for help with the cakes because she can't eat it all on her own. Several days later, Arata completes his Ashton Hall morning routine, and on the way out, he sees Kotono, who then greets him and quickly leaves without saying anything else. This causes him to think that she might be over her abnormal feelings, but then Seiha startles him before reminding him to address her with respect like she said the other night. After he assures her that there is nothing to worry about in regards to the situation with Kotono, Minami jumps in like a caffeine junkie who just got their first hit of the day. While reminding him of the way she humiliated him in the game room the previous night, she calls him senpai, and Seiha immediately asks why. So she explains how he always tries to act like the reincarnation of Master Oogway. At school later that morning, Arata sees Lala from across the hall and stops to avoid her as usual, before Aoka suddenly whispers "I love you" into his ear.
What do you mean by that?
He immediately pulls back to make sure she is still in her right senses. But when he asks why she said that, she asks if he has tried saying those words to Lala. He then tells her that it would be completely stupid and humiliating because she would obviously reject him for her boyfriend, after she says that his overthinking is going to keep him single until his magnum withers away. Her friends call out to her, so she runs off to meet them. While he watches, she starts talking about their plan to take Kotono out to a park and celebrate her birthday together before offering to get a couple for them if they want. As her friends start acting like she is some kind of mythical princess, Arata wonders what would happen if he were to ever tell them how she acts like an unhinged psychopath at home. The next moment, one of them sneaks a peek at him and says that he is handsome. So the others also take a look and admit that they were always too intimidated by his physique to notice that he is actually attractive. When one of them teases the idea of becoming Aoka's sister-in-law, she tells them to forget about it because Arata doesn't have the slightest clue of how to treat a lady. She goes on to call him an ape that only evolved in his outward appearance while still having prehistoric brain matter. But then she also points out how organized he can be and slowly starts adding more compliments without even realizing that her face now looks similar to a stop sign. When they ask why she is blushing, she immediately starts walking off and claims they are already late for class, while Arata gets lost in thought and prays that nothing weird will happen when they all go to the park. Days later, they all get excited after finally reaching there, so Banri reminds them that they have to stay together and make sure Kotono enjoys every second. Right then, the mascot shows up, and Minami immediately takes off running with Aoka. So Banri and Arata beg the others to stay put so the both of them can go get food. Minutes later, they both return to the exact same spot and find absolutely no one. After seeing that they didn't even consider staying with the mascot, they both find a place to sit, and Arata spends a couple minutes calling them before giving up, when Banri suddenly says they should both go on a date.
Yeah, boy.
He reminds her that they should all be celebrating Kotono's birthday, but she tells him not to worry because they will eventually run into each other along the way. She then makes him eat all the food by himself before grabbing his arm and expressing how happy she is to be going on a date with a hot beefed up Chad like him. However, he completely ignores the compliment and continues staring at her jugs until she pulls him close to ask if they are keeping his arm warm.
Hot diggity dog!
The cultured virgin then tries to act like he has no idea what she is talking about. But she tells him to stop acting like he hasn't been craving some milk. After pulling away from her to protect his sanity, he notices the countless number of simps staring at her, right before she promises to let him grab them when they get back home. Once again, he acts like he is repulsed by her plot, but while climbing up a flight of stairs moments later, he continues fighting the urge to dunk his head in between her drumsticks until he slips at the last step. Shortly after that, they get on a ride, and he spends most of it trying to keep his food down before eventually getting a hold of Shin and learning that they are on the other side of the park. After Shin tells the rest of the girls where Arata and Banri are, Alka starts acting like they betrayed Kotono to go have fun, until Seiha reminds her that they were the ones who ran off first. They then take turns talking about how Banri is definitely taking every opportunity to tease him. But when Alka notices how comfortable it's making Kotono, she changes the topic and asks which ride she wants to go on next. Moments later, Arata and Banri find a new spot to take a break, and after he tells her about Shin and the others, she decides to go find them after her snack break. When he takes that as an opportunity to ask how she has been dealing with what their dad said, she admits that it has been troubling her, but says she will need to get more answers from him before making up her mind on what to do. She then notices the weird look on his face and asks if there is something else he wants to talk about, but after thinking of how she might react to what Kotono and Seiha did, he decides to keep it to himself and says he just doesn't want their relationship as siblings to change, as she immediately starts rubbing his head. He tells her to stop, but suddenly remembers that she has actually always been a little overprotective. After saying that she will continue protecting their family, she tries to get up, but a random girl suddenly slips and throws her drinks, so he jumps in to protect her. He then tells the girl not to worry, and as Banri starts drying off as much soda as she can, he promises to help her protect the rest of their siblings. The next moment, Shin and the girls show up and immediately start asking why he is soaked, so he explains what happened to stop them from worrying. Minami then suggests taking one last ride together, and on the way there, Banri suddenly grabs Arata's hand so they can run inside together. Several minutes after sundown, they finally finish with the rides, but Alka still tries to continue the celebration by putting on a performance with help from Minami. When Arata suddenly says he has to take a leak, Shin and Kotono decide to go with him as well, and as soon as they get far enough, Seiha tells the others all about what Kotono did the other night. At first, they all think she just made it up and say it's a bit late to come up with lame jokes, but then she explains exactly what she saw when she entered the bath, and they all go from shocked to genuinely concerned. Like all women, they immediately try to blame Arata.
Women.
And say he couldn't keep his magnum under control. But then Seiha says he was the one in actual danger. After explaining how he talked Kotono down, she assures them that there is nothing to worry about with him because she made sure of it. When Alka asks how on earth she can be so sure, she casually describes how she straddled his glizzy and paid close attention to his heart rate to see if he would get excited.
What?
While Banri gets shocked by the fact that he could stay calm despite being in such a plotful situation, Alka tries to wrap her head around everything she just heard. Seiya then says they have to come up with a solution, but Banri tells them all to relax because it's definitely just a phase. After Minami also agrees that Kotono might just be confused, Seiya suggests keeping the discussion to themselves so Kotono won't feel embarrassed around them. Just then, Alka decides to tell them about the gaming room incident and completely changes the discussion as they all start to realize that Kotono might actually have feelings for him. Seiya then says that the revelation from their dad might have just given her every reason to fully commit to her love for him. However, Banri still says that she is going through a phase that will wear off as long as Arata doesn't do anything stupid. She also tells them that after the dinner with their dad, she couldn't stop thinking about everything and went to ask him a couple more questions. They immediately ask if there is more to know, but she says all he told her was that they were all orphans, and her parents in particular were never even found. After they all agree to keep the situation under wraps, unless Kotono acts up, Arata returns with her and Shin. As they all start heading home, he begins to feel confident that their relationship won't get ruined by one silly bathroom mistake. Minutes later, Arata ends up waiting outside a store while Shin and the girls decide to make one last stop at the park's merch store. Just as he sees someone that looks similar to Lala and freaks out, Alka comes out to check on him, and they end up taking a walk together. At one point, she stops and says they have to talk about the fact that they were never actually twins, but he tells her not to bother because he will never stop seeing her as his twin sister. Regardless, she continues talking about all the times they believed they had twin telepathy before suddenly saying that she loves him. Comment Alabama love story for the next part, and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more videos like this.